You're about to see the bikes that look bold in the showroom but break hearts on the road. Stick around and check out every bike. Don't risk making a stupid mistake when it's time to buy your next ride. Number 7. Harley-Davidson Road Glide CVO. Nothing draws attention like the silhouette of a full-dressed bagger rolling down the boulevard. It carries presence, heritage, and unmistakable sound. But once the chrome fades and the miles stack up, reality starts to settle in. Underneath all that bold styling lies a ride experience that's far less refined than its price tag suggests. This machine is powered by a 1983 cubic centimeter Milwaukee 8 variable valve, timing 121 engine delivering 114 horsepower and 139 pound-feet of torque. It features dual front disc brakes with Brembo 4-piston calipers and a single rear disc, all managed by a reflex-linked anti-lock braking system. Suspension comes from a 47mm inverted front fork and premium rear shocks with remote reservoirs and adjustable preload. It tips the scale at 838 pounds wet, sits at 26.7 inches in seat height, and begins at $44,999. That might sound impressive on paper, but once you ease it off the lot, the sheer size becomes more burden than benefit. At low speeds, every turn feels exaggerated, every correction demands effort, and even basic parking maneuvers can feel like docking a pontoon boat. The fairing may be frame-mounted for stability at speed, but in tight urban spaces it adds to the top-heavy feel that makes slow-speed riding exhausting rather than enjoyable. Comfort also misses the mark. For a motorcycle at this level, riders expect plush, long-distance performance. Instead, the premium suspension delivers feedback that's a little too honest. Even minor imperfections in the road make their way up through the grips and saddle. It's the kind of ride that wears you down gradually, not with big jolts, but with constant chatter that adds up over time. Then there's the issue of heat. The engine radiates warmth like a furnace once the bike settles into traffic. Summer riders in stop-and-go conditions will be the first to notice just how quickly those inner thighs start to roast. Add in the fuel economy, which hovers around 44 miles per gallon, and the long-haul touring dream turns into a series of short jumps between fuel stops. Technology feels like another missed opportunity. The 12.3-inch color touchscreen sounds like a leap forward, but many riders report laggy responses, unreliable Bluetooth pairing, and general system sluggishness. It feels like a high-tech system stuck with old software. More frustration than feature. That disconnect between advertised capability and daily use becomes clearer with every mile. As for ownership, the pride wears off faster than expected. With a price tag approaching $50,000 after taxes and upgrades, expectations are sky high. But what buyers find instead is a bike that doesn't quite justify its cost. It offers all the presence in the world, but demands too many compromises to be enjoyable for the long run. Resale values slip faster than most want to admit, and even die-hard brand loyalists quietly move on after realizing the experience doesn't match the investment. We've done the research, and it's clear these motorcycles miss the mark. If you want more deep dives into the bikes that are a waste of your time and money, make sure to hit like, share your thoughts below, and subscribe to stay updated. Riders drawn to this model often chase that touring dream wrapped in legacy and authority. But as the saddle time adds up, so do the disappointments. The next machine on this list promises sleek design and light handling until you twist the throttle and hear it beg for mercy. Number 6. Triumph Rocket 3. There are motorcycles built to be ridden, and then there are machines built to be stared at. This one commands attention the moment it's parked. From the sculpted tank to the aggressive stance, everything about it screams performance. But the riding experience is far more complicated than the design suggests. It is powered by a 2,458 cubic centimeter inline-3 engine producing 170 horsepower and 163 pound-feet of torque braking, is handled by dual-front Brembo Stylema 4-piston calipers on floating discs, and a single rear disc with a Brembo 2-piston caliper, all governed by a cornering-optimized anti-lock braking system. Suspension consists of a 47mm Showa inverted front fork and a Showa monoshock with adjustable rebound and compression damping in the rear. The dry weight is 644 pounds, with a seat height of 29.5 inches. Starting price is $23,995. It sounds like a dream to anyone who believes power cures all problems, but once the ignition is on and the throttle is twisted, that fantasy quickly turns into fatigue. Every move, every lean, and every attempt to carve through traffic becomes a reminder that this is not a standard heavyweight cruiser. It's a rocket that demands control and strength with every mile. The overwhelming torque, while impressive on paper, can feel aggressive and unmanageable in real-world conditions, especially for riders accustomed to more balanced machines. Even for experienced riders, the weight distribution brings challenges. Navigating through city streets becomes a physical task, not a fluid ride, and despite all the available tech, ride modes, traction control, cruise control, it never quite feels intuitive. It's a bike that constantly reminds you of its bulk, especially during slow-speed maneuvers, parking situations, and tight turns. It is fast, yes, but not agile. Comfort isn't a saving grace either. The seat is low, but the ride quality is stiff. Over longer distances, the firm suspension makes you feel every pothole and road ripple. The handlebars transmit feedback sharply, and the firm rear end delivers more punishment than support. It is a machine that looks like a touring icon but rarely behaves like one. The balance between muscle and comfort is never quite struck. Fuel economy is also underwhelming. Riders who take full advantage of the performance often report figures below 35 miles per gallon, making frequent fuel stops a regular part of ownership. Insurance premiums and maintenance costs add more weight to the ownership experience. Replacement parts for this model don't come cheap, and drops, even minor ones, can turn into expensive repairs thanks to the wide profile and high-end trim pieces. Then there's the question of practicality. For all the power and prestige, the bike offers limited versatility. It is not a commuter, it is not a long-distance comfort king, and it is certainly not a daily rider. Most owners end up using it sparingly, often storing it more than they ride it. That balance of price, performance, and usability just doesn't line up for most real-world riders. There's no denying the engineering achievement behind the rocket. It is bold, impressive, and visually dominant. But the truth is that few riders are ready to live with that kind of power in that kind of package. It demands a lot, rewards little in return, and often sits parked not because it's unreliable, but because it's exhausting. But from one extreme to another, what happens when you pay premium and still get entry level? Looking for gear that actually works? Tap the links in the description. These are rider-tested picks we trust on the road. Number 5. BMW R18. A lot of riders stop in their tracks when they see it. Big, bold, and dripping with retro charm, it draws attention like a magnet in the showroom. With its sweeping fenders, classic tank lines, and polished metal accents, it looks like a masterclass in cruiser design. But looks only go so far when the ride itself is anything but smooth. Beneath all that shine sits an 1,800 cubic centimeter boxer twin engine producing 91 horsepower and 116 pound-feet of torque. The braking system consists of dual front disc brakes with 4-piston fixed calipers and a single rear disc brake, all managed by a full anti-lock braking system. Suspension comes in the form of a telescopic fork up front and a cantilever steel swing arm with a central shock absorber at the rear. Wet weight lands at 761 pounds, seat height measures 27.2 inches, and the starting price begins at $15,995. It all sounds impressive until the key turns. That engine, massive as it is, thumps with the kind of low-end power that feels more tractor than cruiser. Around town, it surges and bucks in stop-and-go traffic, more work than freedom. Parking lot maneuvers demand full-body involvement, as if taming a runaway cart loaded with bricks. The sheer width of the engine forces your feet outward when stopped, giving the uncomfortable impression that the machine is always trying to push you off it. Once moving, the bike feels conflicted. The suspension, while classic in appearance, does little to cushion real-world pavement. Every crack and pothole makes itself known through the frame, and when you finally get to the highway, that bulk catches up with you. Wind buffet, combined with its stretched wheelbase, makes the ride feel stiff and disconnected. Despite the German promise of balance and handling, the truth is that the experience leans far more toward frustration than flow. It's not just the ride that's rough, so is the ownership. Like many premium premium European bikes, parts and service do not come cheap. Oil changes, valve inspections, and general maintenance carry a higher price tag than most Japanese or American competitors. And if you happen to drop it even once, cosmetic repair costs can skyrocket. With exposed cylinder heads and vulnerable components, a simple tip-over becomes an expensive regret. Then there's the dealer network. While service is excellent when you find it, the number of shops equipped to handle repairs and diagnostics is limited compared to other cruiser manufacturers. This makes long-distance travel a gamble unless you're sticking to routes with major cities nearby. For a bike that tries to embody cross-country cool, it ends up better suited as a local weekend machine with limited range and limited practicality. Fuel economy, hovering in the mid-30s, isn't enough to offset the weight and strain. And those riders who bought in expecting a Harley-style rumble with a European twist are often left puzzled. The riding position, ergonomics, and engine response never quite match the style it promises. It's not raw enough to feel rebellious and not refined enough to feel premium. Speaking of buyer's remorse, this next bike tries hard to be cool, but ends up in Craigslist purgatory. Number 4. Kawasaki Eliminator. It makes a bold promise just from the name alone. Something tough, stripped down, and ready to dominate the road. And visually, it has the right ingredients. A low stance, urban-inspired styling, and that familiar blacked-out silhouette signal modern cruiser attitude with a lightweight twist. But once you throw a leg over and hit the road, it becomes painfully clear that this is a motorcycle trying to be too many things at once and excelling at none of them. Power comes from a 451 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine producing 45 horsepower and 32 pound-feet of torque. It is supported by a single front disc brake with a 2-piston caliper and a rear disc with a single piston caliper controlled by a standard anti-lock braking system. Suspension includes a telescopic fork in the front and dual shocks in the rear. It weighs 370 pounds wet, has a seat height of 28.9 inches, and starts at $6,649. From the first twist of the throttle, it becomes apparent this ride is built for a very specific kind of rider. Someone just beginning, unsure of what they want, or maybe looking to recapture their youth. There is nothing inherently wrong with that, but what makes this machine a disappointment is how quickly it feels outgrown. The power band is shallow, the exhaust note uninspiring, and the acceleration barely keeps up with highway traffic. On paper, it's light and manageable. On the road, it's timid and forgettable. The seating position is neutral to the point of being non-committal. You are not quite upright, not quite leaned back, and not quite sure what style this machine wants to represent. Taller riders will feel cramped by the mid-controls, while shorter riders may struggle with a slightly wider frame. The result is a compromise that pleases no one. It lacks the stretched-out comfort of a true cruiser and the nimble handling of a street standard. Instead, it floats in the middle, uncertain, unsure, and unfocused. Comfort is another strike against it. The seat padding is minimal and shaped in a way that begins to feel punishing after less than an hour of riding. Add in the basic dual-shock rear suspension, and even small road imperfections rattle through your spine. While the ride might be tolerable for short city trips, anything longer turns into an exercise in endurance. And then there's the omission of simple, helpful features, like a gear indicator. For newer riders, this is a baffling exclusion. Guessing your gear while managing traffic or trying to downshift smoothly becomes another minor annoyance that builds over time. There is also no wind protection, no storage options, and almost no room to customize without exceeding the bike's initial value. Fuel economy is reasonable, hovering just above 70 miles per gallon in ideal conditions. But that figure is undercut by a small 3.7-gallon fuel tank. This results in frequent stops on even moderate trips, which becomes frustrating on a motorcycle marketed toward urban freedom and minimal maintenance. Resale performance does not help the picture. Once it leaves the dealership, it becomes a tough sell, lingering in classified ads and online listings for months. Buyers quickly realize they are paying for styling, not substance. With so many other bikes in the mid-size segment offering more power, more comfort, and more capability, this machine fades into the background. For some, it may serve its purpose as a short-term beginner option, but for most, it feels like a purchase made too quickly and one regretted just as fast. The next bike on this list doesn't just struggle with direction, it throws its own legacy into question. Number 3. HarleyDavidson Nightster. Some motorcycles are built to carry legacy forward. Others are built to chase trends. This one does the latter, and it shows. What begins as a stripped-down promise of modern performance quickly becomes a frustrating ride that misses the mark in nearly every category. It is powered by a 975 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled Revolution Max engine, producing 90 horsepower and 70 pound-feet of torque. Braking is handled by a single front disc with a 4-piston caliper and a single rear disc with a floating single-piston caliper, both managed by a standard anti-lock braking system. Suspension includes a 41mm front fork and dual rear shocks with coilover springs. It has a wet weight of 481 pounds, a seat height of 27.8 inches, and a starting price of $13,499. At first glance, the Nightster appears to be Harley's way of attracting a new generation of riders. It's lean, low, and minimalistic, everything that would appeal to a younger audience looking for a more urban, performance-inspired experience. But once on the road, the illusion begins to crumble. That Revolution Max engine, while modern in design, delivers its power in a way that feels flat and unengaging. Instead of the signature torque-rich surge Harley riders expect, what you get is a hesitant throttle response and a riding character that lacks soul. It feels more like an appliance than a machine built for riders who care about feel and rhythm. Materials and finish also leave a lot to be desired. There is a distinct sense of cost-cutting across the bodywork. The tank feels thin, the panels flex, and several components, especially around the controls, look and feel like they were lifted from a parts bin. For a brand that has spent over a century building bikes that feel solid and long-lasting, the Nightster's fit and finish seem to belong on something far cheaper. Riding ergonomics don't help. The posture places riders somewhere between an upright cruiser stance and a cafe-style lean, creating a confused geometry that feels neither relaxed nor aggressive. It's as though the designers couldn't decide who this bike was really for, so they settled in the middle and satisfied no one. For taller riders especially, the mid-mounted pegs and small cockpit feel cramped after only a short time in the saddle. Despite its stripped-down look, the Nightster isn't truly affordable when you factor in the upgrades needed to make it livable. The base package feels incomplete, pushing many owners toward aftermarket exhausts, comfort seats, and suspension upgrades just to bring the ride up to par. By the time those additions are made, the total investment often surpasses more capable and better equipped models in the same segment. The promise of a modern Harley that balances heritage with innovation was exciting, but what was delivered instead is a machine caught between identities. It wants to be sleek and simple, yet lacks the raw appeal of the Iron Series. It tries to be advanced and urban-friendly, but misses the ride quality and soul that Harley fans crave. And once the novelty wears off, so does the justification for owning it. For seasoned riders, the Nightster feels like a step in the wrong direction, a hollow experiment in minimalism rather than a purposeful evolution. Its styling might turn heads in the showroom, but on the road it leaves a lot of experienced riders feeling disconnected and underwhelmed. The next bike on this list abandons substance for styling even more boldly, trading power, comfort, and practicality for a silhouette that can't hold up under pressure. Number 2. Honda Shadow Phantom. There is something undeniably attractive about a low-slung cruiser finished in matte black with just the right hint of attitude. It looks like it belongs on the cover of a motorcycle magazine, parked against a brick wall or rolling through an empty desert highway. But the moment that look meets real-world performance, the cracks begin to show. It is powered by a 745 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V-twin engine producing 44 horsepower and 47 pound-feet of torque. Braking is handled by a single front disc with a twin-piston caliper and a rear drum brake, with select trims offering a front-only anti-lock braking system. The suspension setup includes a 41mm front fork and dual rear shocks with 5-position preload adjustability. It weighs 543 pounds wet, has a seat height of 25.8 inches, and a starting price of $8,399. Despite the promise of urban cool and cruiser confidence, the Phantom struggles to deliver where it matters most, on the road. The engine, while smooth and reliable, feels muted. It lacks the punch needed for confident highway merging or quick overtakes, making freeway riding feel more like survival than enjoyment. In city traffic, it's manageable, but on open stretches, you're constantly reminded that looks alone won't carry you forward. Comfort is another issue. The low seat and relaxed foot controls make for a stylish stance, but one that quickly reveals its limitations. The rear shocks are stiff, providing little absorption over rough pavement. Potholes, expansion joints, and even light road imperfections are transferred directly through the spine. Long rides become a test of patience rather than a pleasure, especially for riders over 6 feet tall who may find their knees riding awkwardly high. Cornering capability is also restricted by the bike's low clearance. Even at moderate lean angles, the foot pegs scrape, discouraging any sense of fluid handling. This puts a ceiling on how much fun can actually be had once the road starts to curve. It looks like a cruiser built to carve through the streets, but in practice, you're constantly backing off the throttle to avoid grinding metal. Then there's the tech, or lack thereof. In a time when even budget bikes come with digital displays, ride modes, or at least basic convenience features, the Phantom feels bare bones in all the wrong ways. There is no gear indicator, no traction control, and some models still lack a full anti-lock braking system. The analog speedometer feels like a throwback, but not in a charming way, more like a missed opportunity to modernize. The ownership experience doesn't improve over time. Depreciation hits fast, especially since this model competes in a crowded market full of better performing and more feature-rich alternatives. Even with Honda's reputation for reliability, resale values remain underwhelming. Many owners end up trading out within the first year after realizing the excitement fades as quickly as the gloss on its fuel tank. The Phantom might look like a bike built for weekend freedom, but it rides like a compromise. The lack of power, limited comfort, and stripped-down features make it difficult to enjoy in anything but short bursts. It does not inspire confidence, it does not surprise, and for many who bought based on styling alone, it eventually becomes a parked reminder that motorcycles need more than image to be worth keeping. And now for the one bike that checks all the wrong boxes: underpowered, outdated, overpriced, and unbelievably overrated. Number 1. Indian Chief. Classic line, sweeping fenders, and a growling V-twin. On first impression, this bike looks like the embodiment of American motorcycling heritage. It turns heads at stoplights and makes a statement rolling into any parking lot. But the moment the ride begins, all that timeless styling starts to feel like a distraction from a long list of flaws that modern riders can't ignore. It is powered by an 1,800 cubic centimeter air-cooled Thunderstroke 111 engine producing approximately 79 horsepower and 108 pound-feet of torque. Braking is handled by dual front disc brakes with 4 piston calipers and a single rear disc with a 2-piston caliper controlled by a standard anti-lock braking system. The suspension includes a telescopic front fork and dual rear shocks with adjustable preload. It has a wet weight of 679 pounds, a seat height of 26 inches, and a starting price of $17,499. Once you're underway, the romance begins to unravel. Despite all that displacement, the engine's character feels dated. Throttle response is sluggish, and the power delivery lacks the snap and torquey curve expected of a heavyweight cruiser. The air-cooled setup may appeal to purists, but in traffic or warm weather, it becomes a liability, especially when the engine heat begins roasting your thighs in stop-and-go conditions. Extended city rides feel less like freedom and more like punishment. On highways, it offers a straight-line steadiness, but not much else. The suspension struggles to smooth out imperfections, and even moderate bumps resonate up through the seat and bars. Long-distance comfort becomes an issue quickly, especially with a saddle that feels more styled than shaped for support. For larger riders or those accustomed to premium touring models, it becomes clear this is more show than substance. Cornering is another compromise. The weight and geometry of the frame work against confidence. At nearly 700 pounds, the bike hesitates to lean into curves. Ground clearance is minimal, and scraping metal mid-turn becomes a regular occurrence if you ride with any enthusiasm at all. This might be forgiven on a bike from decades past, but not on one made for 2025. Technology is where the limitations grow even more frustrating. While the touchscreen display looks modern from a distance, its usability and interface lag behind current industry standards. There are no ride modes, no traction control, and limited customization options. For this price point, the feature set feels alarmingly thin, especially when compared to other cruisers in the same bracket offering refined electronic aids, adjustable ride settings, and touring-friendly tools. Then there's the matter of ownership. Finding service can be a challenge outside major metropolitan areas. The dealer network is sparse, which means long trips to get basic service or parts. Repair costs are steep, and wait times for for factory components stretch weeks in some regions. For a motorcycle meant to be ridden far and wide, it's oddly tethered to availability issues and dealership scarcity. Depreciation finishes the job. The Chief may dazzle when new, but resale values tend to sink quickly. The audience for these bikes is small and shrinking, and the price of entry does not match what many used buyers are willing to pay. For those who bought on looks alone, the realization comes fast that the experience does not live up to the image. You've seen the bikes to avoid. From overpriced disasters to underwhelming machines, make sure to stay informed before making your next purchase. Like, comment, and subscribe for more so you never regret a bike purchase again.